welcome to Time with Alumni. And today we have here with us an alumnus, Dr. Emmanuel Peprah, the engineer, Dr. Emmanuel Peprah. The engineer is very important. And so you're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the time. I'd like to know, what did you read here in undergrad? And you can start from your secondary school days.
Understood, right. Yes, I prefer to start from my secondary school days. So basically, I attended St. Augustine's College in KNUST. I went to Form 1 in 1987. It was the old system, so we went through the O-level system. And I completed my O-level in 1992. And then I continued with my A-level back to St. Augustine's to complete my A-level. So basically, as O-level, I studied science, of course. And then at A-level, I took math, physics, and chemistry. So I completed my A-level in 1996. And during that period, I think there was a break. There was a strike in the university, so there was a break of 1 year before we could go to the university. Yeah, so after my sixth form education, I did my national service and then stayed home for 1 year before enrolling in UST. So I actually started my program in civil engineering in 1996. That was when I started my first year here at UST in the civil engineering program. And as you know, it's a 4-year program, so I completed in 2000. That was when I graduated, and luckily for me, I was able to graduate with the first class in civil engineering. So with this, I think my ultimate goal was to further my education. Yes, but things don't usually turn out the way you want. So prior to completing my undergrad, I started applying to schools in the US, in the UK as well, and schools in Germany and the Scandinavia. Yes, all over, because my aim was to go all the way, finish my PhD before it means I start working. That was my goal, that I was going to finish and then acquire experience and then ultimately come back to academia to teach. So I was really focused on going all the way before I start working. But I applied to some schools and I gained a lot of admission, right? But what I say is that usually for postgraduate studies outside, admission without funding is no admission. That's what I say.
That's true.
Right. So initially, I didn't get any funding, but I got admission to schools in the UK, in the US. And because of that, I had to wait and I apply again. So during that period, I started working with an engineering firm, right? It's a consulting firm. So going back a little bit, I did my internship with that company. It's called Municipal Development Collaborative Limited. It was actually founded by a former director of urban roads. So whilst I was in 10 years, I did my internship with them. And at that time, we did traffic study, traffic analysis. They had collected a lot of traffic data and we had to analyze it. So we used both Excel, SPSS to analyze the traffic data. So I had that internship experience with them and that relationship with the managing director. So after school, after my program here in the UST, previously when you finish A-level, you do national service, and also after university, you do national service. So I did national service twice.
I was going to ask about that.
Correct, yeah. So right after university, I did my national service for 1 year, and after that, I went back to where I did my internship, and then worked for another year with them. So while I was working, I was still applying to schools outside. So it happened that I think some of our mates discovered a program in Germany. Yeah, but it's called, I think, WARE. It's about water resources program. So in Germany and the Scandinavian countries, tuition is free. So if you gain admission, you're not paying any tuition. And then once you go in there, if you can work, let's say 20 hours a week, you can use that to pay you for 4 years boarding and feeding and all that. So that year when I started working, some of our mates actually got admission to go and do that program. And a very close friend of mine, he had a scholarship. So in addition to the fact that he didn't have to pay tuition, he got a scholarship that he could use for as a stipend for his monthly upkeep, right? So he informed me that, why don't you try Germany? Germany schools, the opportunities to get funding, and he also had first class. He said, with your first class, it's possible that you get funding, so why don't you try some schools? So I also put in some application. I continued with my applications. I applied to the University of Tübingen, and I also applied to the University of Stuttgart, and continued application to other universities in Sweden, Norway, and I believe Denmark at that time. So luckily for me, my application for the University of Tübingen was successful. So I was informed that I had admission. And as I said earlier, admission with no funding is not admission, right? But in Germany, technically you don't pay tuition. So your living expenses is not that much, right? So I think I was prepared to even go even without any funding, right? But luckily for me, I received an email that 5 of us go into that program, right? It's called Applied Environmental Geoscience at the University of Tübingen, and it's basically English language program. Everything the language instruction is basically English, right? So I think we were about 24 in the class from 13 different countries. That is how the course has been structured, bringing people from all over the world to collaborate to solve environmental issues. So I got an email that out of the 25 students, 5 of us have been shortlisted for a scholarship. And then the scholarship program comes from the Ministry of Education, which for short they call it BMBF. I believe, going back to my German, if I remember correctly. So I think it's Bundesministerium für Bildung und Forschung. Basically, the Ministry of Education for I think research.
Okay.
Yes. So we were told that 5 of us have been shortlisted for that scholarship, and they're going to select 3 of us. So
out of the 5?
Yeah, out of the 5. Wow. So we should write an essay.
Wow.
And then based on the essay, 3 of us will be selected, right? So yes, I put together a nice essay, and then the essay basically is about, so what is your goal, right? What do you intend to do by studying this program? After that, what do you want to do and all that? So that was something very good for, because I had a clear idea what I wanted to do, right? So in the essay, I put together a nice essay, and then I told them, first of all, I structured the essay such that I told them about my short-term goals, my medium-term goal, and my long-term goal.
Wow.
That is how I believe I got it. Yeah, because the goal of the program is for you to come and study, right, gain the necessary experience, and then go back and then help your country.
Okay.
And then even with that, also, if you could stay in academia, that is their preference. Okay. So the way I structured my essay, that was exactly what I said. That basically I want to study for the short term goal. I'm studying this master's program, and after that, I would like to continue with a PhD. So once I complete a PhD, since engineering is very practical, I would like to gain some work experience, and then after I'll come back to academia and teach. So I think it was a very good essay. Yeah. I put it together, and then I had my brother-in-law review it for me. I think he was at that moment with the Lands Commission. He was one of the top personnel over there. So I had him review it for me. He reviewed it. Usually he's very critical when he reviews something for you. He's going to mark that, but he reviewed it and he didn't have any comments. He said, this is good to go. So I was very confident that I was going to be successful. So I sent it to them, put it through, and then in about 2 weeks' time, I got an email that I've been successful, I've been selected. And I think we were, the 3 of us, another Ghanaian, I think he was in physics. But at the program that we studied, they wanted students in engineering, the sciences and all that. So he from the physics department also got a chance. So 2 Ghanaians, and then 1 lady from Canada, 3 of us got a scholarship. And the unique thing about that scholarship is that in the email they told me, okay, if you are married, you can bring your wife. She's going to get a stipend, and then if you have children, you're going to give a maximum of 2 of them also stipend. So you can come with your wife and 2 children.
Wow.
Right. And that time, my wife was in London, but we had already done the traditional marriage. We were already engaged, and we were yet to do the wedding. Right. So when I got the email, the opportunity came, I called her and told her that this is what I received. So would you want to join me, or do you want to stay? Whatever, it's up to you. You make the decision. And she said, of course, I would like to join you. So I told her that fine. In order for them to include you on the scholarship package, they need a marriage certificate. So you will have to come down as soon as possible for us to get married, to get a certificate, and then I had to send it to them before they finalized the scholarship package. So when she came down, we did that, and then I was able to add her to the scholarship package. So that's how we found ourselves in Germany. So in Germany, the program was for 2 years, the master's program. So I studied for 2 years. As I said, it's a program called Applied Environmental Geoscience. So basically, it's similar to like environmental engineering. The courses that we take and all that, very similar. So it was basically in line with what I wanted to do, because my goal was to stay in environmental engineering and then acquire the necessary skills and then move on to practice a little bit and then go back and teach in that field.
So are you teaching?
Currently, no, I'm not teaching. We'll get to that point. Yeah, I'll get to why I'm not teaching now, right? So we're in Germany for 2 years. Our son was actually born in Germany.
Okay.
Yeah, our son, Emmanuel Peprah, he's now 23 years old. He's a final computer science student at Penn State University. So he was born in Germany. And then whilst in Germany, as I said, my goal wasn't to stop at master's, right?
Yes.
My goal was to finish my PhD before I started working. So right after first year, I started applying to schools in the US for a PhD program. So I used my first year transcript to apply to a PhD program in the United States, right? And with that transcript, I got several admission to several schools. And as I said, admission without funding, so admission. Right, so initially I got a lot of admissions to
but still
school.
No funding.
No funding, so that was what I was waiting on, right? And then since I had only my first year transcript, so all those admissions were provisional based on me providing additional transcript, right? So I was just reading. I knew that admission was in the bag for me, and then one of the schools reached out to me, that is Michigan State University. They reached out to me that, we are considering you for an assistantship program, which is a teaching assistantship program, right? And we've seen your GRE score, we've seen your TOEFL score, it's good. But since you're going to be teaching students, you need to take another test, which is called Test of Spoken English, right? So they had a minimum score that you had to meet before you could be a teaching assistant, because they're really concerned. They wanted to make sure that your English is clear, that when you're teaching the student, you understand. Yeah, basically. So that test is basically an oral test that at that time, I think they recorded on cassette, if you remember, right? So when I went for the test, you basically go in and then they put in the cassette and then start recording. And then they will ask you a question and then you respond, yes. And then everything is recorded and then they go and grade it, right? So I'm interested in this. I was running close to when I had to go to the United States, right? And then since we're in Tübingen, I think it's in the southern part of Germany, right? Close to Stuttgart, about 30 minutes ride, right? So I couldn't find any test center to go and take the test of spoken English near me. So I had to travel to Berlin. So I had to fly to Berlin and then continue with the train to, I believe at the test center at that time, I think it was Cottbus. Probably, I think it's been a while, right? So I flew to Berlin and then continued to the test center just to take that test to meet the deadline so that they could consider me for the teaching assistantship. And I was fortunate. I passed the test. I even got higher than the minimum score. So the score was taken to the school. So once they received the score, they said, okay, and now we can issue you the offer for teaching assistantship. And basically what that entails is that once you're a teaching assistant, you don't pay tuition, and then you get a monthly stipend, right? So once again, I was very fortunate, and I got that scholarship. So right after my master's program, I wouldn't even say after my master's, because when I was leaving for the United States, I hadn't even completed the program because I was still writing my thesis, right? And then as a teaching assistant, I had to go 2 weeks earlier before school reopened so that they could train us as teaching assistants to teach the students, right? So I talked to my advisor in Germany, and he said, "Oh, you're fine. The research that you're doing is more modeling computer. We are just running models on the computer." So he said, "You can go ahead and then go and complete your thesis over there." So that was the agreement, that you just go complete, bring it back, I'll review it. If it's okay, I'll organize for them to print it, get the hard copy for you, right? So that is how.
Well, bring it back was through email or?
Yes, so through email.
Through email.
Yes, so basically I was just sending email back and forth with him. We made corrections before we finalized it. He accepted it and then sent it back for printing before my master's certificate was issued.
And when that was happening, you were already doing your PhD?
Yes, when that was happening, I was already going through the teaching assistantship training, and then I started the PhD program. So I was working on my master's thesis, right? At the same time, teaching as a teaching assistant, and at the same time,
studying as a
PhD candidate. In the United States, as a PhD candidate, you actually required to take some courses. So basically, master's level course, and even level 400 course. Some of them based on the research you intend to do. Your advisor will recommend some courses starting from level 400 through a master's level program.
Just make it easier for you?
Yes, so that it will align you with your research that you intend to do, right? So basically, you need some background in order to do the research. So based on the plan from your advisor for you, he recommends some courses to take. So as I said, working on my master's thesis, taking classes, and then teaching. Yeah, so it wasn't easy. And also, I was a family man. We had we had a son who at that time was about 1 year old. We traveled with him here. So straight from Germany, we went to the US. Yeah, we didn't even come back home. And then I started the program, and I was able to submit my thesis and get my certificate, and then I focused on my PhD program. So I continued to work as a teaching assistant, took courses, and then started my research program. And at a point, I think after 3 semesters, my assistantship was converted from teaching assistantship to research assistant. So at that point, you basically focus on research, right? So for my case, I think usually PhD in the US takes about 4 years. But in my case, the research I was doing, I got very good results published. So I finished my PhD program in 3 years. So I started in 2004, and by 2007 I had completed my PhD program. So right after my PhD program, in the United States, when you complete, maybe your advisor will start asking you, have you found any job? Have you started looking for a job? Right. So it was on me, and then I was able to apply to some jobs, and then I got a job in the Washington DC area. So I started practicing with a consulting engineering firm in the Washington DC area, and I've moved from that firm to another firm, and currently that is where I am right now. So I've been working as a consultant environmental engineer for the past over 20 years. Started in 2007, getting close to 20 years. So I've been in the Washington DC area, and basically what we do as consulting engineers is that we design water and wastewater treatment plants and the associated collection system, that is the sewer network, and also pumping stations, right? So basically anything related to that is what I currently do. And then in working at this stage, you move to a point where you become project manager. And as a project manager, you don't just focus on your field, right? There are several disciplines that involve in a project, right? So you have the civil discipline, you have the process mechanical, you have electrical, you have instrumentation, right? And you have heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. So as a project engineer, you need to have basic knowledge of all of them, right? So our training here in UST helps a lot, because in first year we take basic mechanics, we take, I think, basic electricity. So you learn all these other disciplines that gives you the necessary background so that when you move to that level, when the electrical engineers are speaking, at least you have a basic knowledge. As a program manager, you should be able to understand when you go for project meetings, you should be able to defend some of the questions that come up. You don't have to say my electrical engineer is not here, so I cannot answer. You should, as a PM, be able to answer those questions. So my training over here, the solid background that we have in the diverse field, usually comes in handy when you get to that point. So that has really helped me in my career, and I think I'm moving on. And as you said, a question about are you in the teaching field, right?
Yes.
So what happens in the US is that if you want to stay in the teaching field, if you want to stay in academia, you stay in academia, right? So right after PhD, basically you start teaching or you do a postdoc, right?
Okay.
So once you leave the academia in the US and you want to come back, it's basically impossible because they want to see you by publishing continuously. There shouldn't be any gap. So there should be a continuous publishing before they absorb you into the academic, right? But if you go out and you practice and you want to come back, it's very difficult.
Not even as an adjunct lecturer.
Yeah, so if like an adjunct lecturer, they will consider it, and in that case, probably it's going to be more research related. You could be helping the professor with his research, right? But actually going out to teach in the class and all, it's a little bit difficult. It can be done, but maybe the unique situation whereby whilst you are in the field, all the work you were doing maybe was research related, and then you continue publishing. So in that case, you can come back to academia. But in my case also, I didn't want to stay in research. I wanted an actual hands-on practical experience, right? You design something and then you watch it being built, right? That is what I wanted. So that when you go to a classroom as a professor or lecturer, you know, whatever you say will be very practical because you've seen it being done, right from inception. You go through the planning phase, you go through all that, and then you design it, and you actually supervise construction people. That is my passion, right? So that is what eventually I would like to help out in the classroom. So I'm looking at collaborating with some lecturers or professors so that I will come into the class and give a short lecture
in the
about
US
what
or
in
here?
the US, right?
We're not
And
here.
then here too, I'm looking for that opportunity as well.
Because we do.
Right? Correct. So yeah, that is why I'm visiting right now to look for such opportunities for me to at least, impact what I've studied here into, especially this is my alma mater. So whatever I can do to help, I think I'm prepared to do that.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah, sorry, I've taken
No, it's perfect.
right.
But I also wanted to know, you didn't tell us what you did for the PhD.
Yes, so my PhD research, I think I did something very unique, right? I basically looked at treatment of contaminated water, right?
Okay.
And then looking at those of, you will probably know about electrochemistry, right? There were several research papers on using DC, which is direct current, to break down organic solution, right? So my idea was that fine, in order to get direct current, you need whatever we get, right, from our power source is AC, which is alternating current. So to get to DC, you actually have to connect whatever you get from the wall into a rectifier, and then it converts it to direct current, and then you apply it to the solution, and then with some reactions, it breaks down the organics. But in my case, I said, okay, fine. Instead of bringing in an intermediate, maybe rectifier, I want to use the AC directly to degrade the organic compound. So that was the first time anybody was exploring using AC to degrade organic compounds. So that's what gave me the opportunity to publish a lot. Because in publishing, you have to come up with something new, right? Or you are building on existing knowledge, right? Yeah, so mine was, everything was novel. So whatever I came up with,
became the
basic, right, starting from that point, right? And I was able to point out like the similarities between AC and DC and the reactions that happen and all that. I did all that comparison, and also the efficiency and all that I did. Yeah, I did extensive research in that area, and I was able to get very good results, which I published. That is what helped me to graduate within 3 years instead of 4 years.
Wow.
Right, because in the USA, to graduate, they look more at how many papers have you published. Yeah, so that actually helped me a lot.
So by the time you were done with your PhD, how many papers had you
Yeah,
published?
so by the time I was done my PhD, I had published, I think what they look out for is journal papers, right? I had published 4 journal papers and then several conference papers.
Wow.
There's several conference papers. So that is what happened. And then for my dissertation, basically, I put together the published papers and then with an introduction and then I think the conclusion. That is how my PhD dissertation was set up. Right? So it was set up in the form of published papers. Yes.
Wow. That's great.
Yes.
And wow, that's great. So you spoke about the basic education you had here.
Yes.
You did civil.
Yes, I did.
Civil is quite good. It allows you to go into either structures.
Correct.
Water.
Correct.
Yes. And you chose to go water.
Yes, I chose to go into water. Correct.
I have a question.
Yes.
We know how our water is treated here in Ghana. It's very different from how your water is treated in the US. That's because I'm told that the water in the US, where you dispel your waste, is the same water you drink from. So treating it is,
Correct.
unlike ours, it's not the same thing. Right, isn't it?
That's correct.
Okay.
Exactly correct.
So my question is, if it's not the same, definitely we won't use the same methods. Just out of curiosity. So creating our water system, treatment will be very different from yours simply because you use it. So my question is, we get most of our waters, I don't know about the US, do you get most of your waters from natural water bodies or?
Yes, it's a combination, right? So we get it from surface water and then also groundwater is very huge. Pumping from the aquifer, right, to supplement. Yes, groundwater. I see that Ghana, we don't go much into groundwater, but in the US, depending on where you are, there are some areas that there's no surface water body, so all their water comes from groundwater. That's what they pump and treat, right?
Yeah, because we don't know. I know that Ghana gets most of its water from its water bodies, and that's why the Galamsey issue is a big issue.
Correct.
But then, I just want to understand how it is that you're able to push your waste into your water and at the same time make it this from a layperson's point of view.
Yes.
Still drinkable.
Yes. So let me go into it this way, right? So basically, it's like the water cycle. Sure. So what happens is that as you said, there are several surface water bodies that we use as a source of our drinking water, right?
Yes.
So assuming we are looking at one particular river, right, flowing down from several communities up, down to the one south, right? So what happens is that the communities upstream, basically will get their source of water for drinking, right, coming before the community, right? And then once they get that and treat it and use it in that community, they have to treat the wastewater. So what the wastewater treatment is very important. It's not just the one that we flush down the toilet, it's what we treat whatever is coming from the kitchen, that we call rainwater.
Yes.
Everything has to be collected through the sewer network to the wastewater treatment plant, right? So once you get to the wastewater treatment plant, as you can see, like when you get to the plant headworks, you're going to see dirty water coming that really smells bad, right? And then you take that water through various treatment processes, right? So the first treatment process you run it basically you run it through a screen. So the screen, I would say somebody here we call a sieve, right? So you run it through a screen to take the bigger portions out of that, and then whatever comes out, you can take it to the landfill and deposit, and then it continues down, right? It goes to primary treatment. It is called a primary clarifier. Usually huge tanks that the wastewater go in, and then the solids in the wastewater settles to the bottom, and then you pump the solids at the bottom, and then you can treat that as a solid treatment train, and then the wastewater continues through the system. So after the primary, from the primary treatment stage, you go into the biological reactor, which is I think the secondary treatment, right? And basically the biological reactor uses microorganisms to break down, take down the nutrients in the water and break it down further, right? And then from that stage, it goes into the secondary clarifier. At that stage, the water is clear now, and then the additional solids, microbial solids, also settle to the bottom, which you can collect and treat the separate solids treatment train, and then the water that comes out of the secondary treatment, it's clean water. It's very clear if you're looking at it, right? But it still has to go through depending on the requirement of the water body that we're going to discharge into. Some plants will require that you take it through tertiary filtration phase. So after the secondary treatment, you filter it further down through the tertiary treatment. And then from that stage, basically the water looks clear, and then we disinfect. So from that stage, you have to disinfect it before discharging it back into the stream. So if you go to the headways of the plant, very dirty water comes in, and then the water that goes back into the river is clear like drinking water, right?
Explains a lot.
Yes. So at that point, all the various contaminants and anything that could cause disease-causing organisms have been removed from it. And even, I don't want to go into technical details into that, but each water body has its own requirement for discharge. Some have very stringent requirement. You need to actually take out so many contaminants before you can discharge. So it depends on the water body. So as you said, if you go to where the final treated water is discharged, it's clear like drinking water.
That right. Explains, because you hear people say that a lot.
Yes,
comparing the water smell with ours.
Correct. So if that you discharge it, and once it goes in, it flows to the stream or river, and then it dilutes it further. And then the sunlight also is a very good treatment system. So with the sunlight shine on it and then flowing down, it cleans it. So this same wastewater that we just talked about, we treated, will continue downstream to another community where their treatment plant will be located. And they're actually going to pump that water and take it into water treatment and drink it. And then also after that, they clean the wastewater and then discharge it, and then it continues, right? So that is how
it's a cycle.
Yeah, it's a cycle. So that's how it happens. So we are not discharging like raw sewage into Yes, correct. Yeah. Right. So that is interesting, because with our firm, which is called Corolla Engineers in the United States, you can Google it and look at it. I think what we do is mainly water, right? So any consulting work that we do is related to water or wastewater. Although we have structural discipline, electrical and all that, our goal is that we are staying with water or wastewater treatment. Other firms have like transportation division, structural division that they will hire riders, but our firm, we don't do that. Our goal is to stay with water. So whatever we are doing, if it's being structural component, that means we are putting out a building at a treatment plant or as a compensation. It's all water related, right? And then we are one of the leading firms that currently we are doing what we call water reuse. Okay. Right? So basically, as I told you, the process, we discharge water back into the river that is clean. Now we are looking at reusing that water for something else, right? And then what we are saying is that fine, instead of even discharging it to the stream, we want to take that treated wastewater and take it through a series of treatment systems back to drinking water, right? And then whoever came up with the idea initially came up with, a statement or a jargon that I think did not help us. They wanted to show how technically advanced we are, right? So what he said is that from toilet to drinking water, they probably did. It doesn't sound palatable, right?
Yes.
Because I think he wanted to demonstrate that we can do that. We can take it that way
straight from that
and then give it to you to drink. Yeah, so I think that was his intention to show how innovative we are to do that. But the public did not accept that, right? So initially there was a lot of pushback on that, right? But now when you go to California, they are running out of water resources. They pump their groundwater, the water table is way down, and then they are overstretching their surface water. So now we have to look into that concept because we are running short of water and we cannot pump water from where it's going to increase the water bill, right? So now they are becoming receptive to the idea
of toilet
to drinking water. So another way to do it, you can get it from maybe the effluent from the wastewater and then inject it into the groundwater, the aquifer system. And then that also will go through some natural attenuation, right, before you pump it out. Yes, but there are some communities that we don't even have the luxury of doing that. So right from wastewater treatment, we take it to water treatment. Basically, what the system that we mostly use is reverse osmosis. So there are a lot of RO plants that we are using to treat it to drinking water level. So we have ongoing project. I believe one is in Dallas, Texas, that we are taking it straight from the wastewater effluent and then taking it to the water distribution, right? So as water is becoming scarce, people are beginning
getting more innovative.
Yes, accept the fact that we can treat it to levels that are safe to drink.
That Ghana doesn't get there, but
but yes, eventually
we could get there.
Climate change and all that. Eventually we could get there. So this is where we have to start thinking ahead, right? We don't have to wait till we get there before we find a solution. We have to start thinking right now ahead. That what do we do when we get to that point? So this is where I believe as engineers we should start, alerting the various bodies and authorities about the potential of getting to a point where water resources will be scarce. So at that point, what do we do, right? And even with Ghana, I think we haven't gotten to the level of the wastewater collection system and then treatment. So that is my passion now, right? To make sure that we start putting in place measures to stop polluting our water bodies and actually start putting in the infrastructure to collect, not just whatever we flush down the toilet. We should be collecting whatever is in our kitchen bathroom and all that, just as we do over there into the sewage network, and then have it go to a treatment plant and then treat it properly before discharge. I'm very passionate about that. Basically, looking into areas where I can collaborate with people to get to that point. So that is one of my greatest passions, to get to a point whereby we are going to have a detailed and complex wastewater collection system, and then several treatment plants, and then also stringent legislation that will require, especially estate development and the rest, to make sure that whatever waste that you generate from your community is treated before it's discharged. So if we can make it as part of the permit requirement, that before you even start a development, you have to show us your plan for treating the waste. We should no more be discharging waste straight into our river bodies. So if you can start from that point, that developers and also even with private individuals, right, we have to get to the point where before we get a permit to build, there should be a plan.
It's so, but is it kept? That's the problem.
Yes, I think we have to enforce it. It takes a lot, right? It's going to take a lot of funding to get to that point. Yes. But I believe with commitment, right, from government and also even as engineers, we have to make a lot of noise about this issue, that we cannot continue down the path of what we're doing right now. So we should rethink and then also try to influence legislations that will enforce, existing requirements, and even come up with new requirements that will protect our environment. So I'm very, very passionate about that.
So would this, by chance, I'm just curious, require some kind of interconnectedness? Because most of us, when anybody builds their homes, there isn't any connection. You're talking about sewage. I'm sure in the US there's a connection in almost every home. But everyone has their own soakaway or something where the water goes privately. Would it require something like that for you to be able to?
Yes, it's going to require that. So that all comes with planning, as you said, right? In the US, before you develop a land where you can start building, right, you have to make sure that you have all these utilities, right? You have to make sure you show where your water supply is coming from. You have to develop a sewage or collection system as well, and then your electricity and all that, right, is part of the planning process before you can even start building, right? So in Ghana's case, I'm looking at, for new development, we should start enforcing that. And then for the existing, for new development, that's where you can start from, practically, right? And then the existing system, right? We have to come up with like a master plan on how do we do this, because there are definitely obstructions and potential ways that we could lay sewer pipes and all that, right? So we can look at it creatively. How can we do it practically, right? So areas that is feasible, we can come in and put sewer network and then continue down to pumping station and then pump it for treatment, right? And then where it's not feasible, as we said, we can continue with a septic system, right? And then as we empty our septic tanks, we take it to the wastewater treatment for treatment. Currently, it's being done, right? I know there are, I think, treatment plants in Accra, and I've also visited one here in Kumasi that are actually taking the septic waste and then taking it through the treatment process before discharging. Previously, I think they were discharging straight in Accra into the sea or discharging it into the water. But I was very impressed that we started something like that. But now we have to build on it, extend it to get to a point whereby it's completely illegal to discharge wastewater directly into any water bodies. Right? So I know definitely it's a process, but we have to start so that eventually we'll get there.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. So I have more.
Yes, I know.
But the time is really little.
Yeah.
I'm also wondering, I've had a discussion before with an engineer, and his opinion is that, in Ghana, almost everybody, where there isn't Ghana water access yet, because Ghana water produces, I think, the bulk of the water we drink, but not everyone has access to it. There are pipes probably laid in some areas, but the water hasn't gotten that far. So you have a lot of the new areas that people have put up buildings and they all sink boreholes. That's the only way. Because, yes, and everyone wants to own their own borehole, because if you are sharing with this person, it means sharing cost of electricity to pump and all that. And his concern is that it will get to a point where you're going to be drinking from someone's wastewater, because you are probably downstream, he's upstream, and he's built his, and you are tapping into it without knowing it. So his opinion was that, well, if Ghana water hasn't gotten there yet, then let us get houses to agree that maybe in this community, or like you're saying, actually he said that it should be planned, come together and build one hole that provides water for everybody. What's your take on that? Because realistically, we can't, as you said, there are already existing buildings. It's going to take time to come together the master plan to even be able to get something.
Correct.
So what do you think about this?
Yes, that's a good point, right? As you said, even for good coordination, right, and to ensure that there's structure, right, the Ghana Water Company can take it on itself to even be responsible for that. Yeah, that is my first point that I'll get to, right? So because as I told you, there are some counties in the US where basically 100% of their source of water is groundwater. So it's a county that is supplying it.
Okay.
Right? It's a county that is supplying it. It's similar to another county that is taking from service water and treating. So since they don't have that luxury, it's a county that is responsible for doing that, right? So Ghana Water Company, first of all, could look into that, right? But in our case, I prefer if this is where private individuals can come in. Yeah, this is where an opportunity to, establish a business and do that. Yeah. So a private individual can start looking into that. Mm-hmm. That, okay, looking at this area, this is what I can come in and actually treat the water, and then you pay. So in this case, you're not paying your bill to Ghana Water Company.
You're paying to a private
individual, right? That is also possible. We could potentially look into that. And now I know, to sink a borehole, you need a permit from Ghana Water Company, right? So this is where before the permit is issued, I hope they are looking in the area to make sure existing, wells, and then also if there are septic systems that are discharging to the groundwater, it's actually some of the research that my friends did, right? You can actually calculate based on where you have a system, septic system, and then your well, right? As it goes through the groundwater, we call natural attenuation, right? Okay. So there are microbes in the soil that can break it down. So it could potentially break it down before it gets to the wall, right? So that case, that comes with planning on how do you site your wells relative to your existing septic system or soak away. So all this has to be regulated, right? So that, as you said, there's no potential of just installing a septic right close to somebody's borehole and the person will basically be drinking in a contaminated water. So all this requires coordination and also, as you said, make sure that I think there are several existing regulations that need to be enforced. So basically enforce existing regulations, and where we don't have any regulations, also influence lawmakers to make sure that we have regulations to make sure that everybody is safe, because as engineers we have to make sure that everybody is safe and we are protecting our environment.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so looking at coming back to teach, hopefully, I'm looking at that because that's what you told them. Your short-term, medium-term, and long-term goal is to teach, but you haven't done that. Yes. So looking at coming back to teach, both in the US and here as well here, I know that my provost is more than willing, and I know he will talk with you about it if you should express the interest. So I'm just asking, most likely I'm thinking we need our undergraduates to benefit a lot. So postgraduates as well, postgraduate numbers are very few.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard about the endowment fund.
Yes, I talked to one of my colleagues and he mentioned that too.
And I know many universities outside have endowment funds, but this is the college's best initiative, yes, and primarily to help with postgraduate education, because undergraduate education is highly subsidized, whereas postgraduate education isn't.
Okay.
And so the cost is so high, yes, and then it makes it really difficult. That's why lots of people are looking to school outside. I'm sure that's why you also.
Yeah, in addition to that, also learning advanced system that
to do here.
Correct.
Well, then things are changing.
Yes.
Because recently we just inaugurated 2 RF labs, RF and microwave laboratories.
Oh, great.
Yes, GIS, Road and Schwartz.
Okay.
Yeah, a German. Yes.
Okay.
Came together and gave us the equipment so that we don't have many of our students going out. Yes, they can do whatever research you need to do here. Exactly. And that is actually one of the main reasons the endowment fund is being pushed or has been established, so that we can create more of such laboratories, more opportunities, so that students we don't have to lose the cream of our people like we lost you to the US.
No, you haven't lost me. I'll come back.
When?
I think that's why I'm here. I think whatever I need to do to come back and help, I think you have to go through the process. So let me know the process.
We will definitely
let me talk to the right people, and I'm available. And now as I said, I think now with video conferencing and the rest, I don't have to be physically.
No,
I could still help online remotely. Yeah, so
we could still argue that we've lost you in the sense that your children would have been here as well, but they've.
I know.
But that's another.
Okay, understood. Understood.
All the same, we are grateful that you are here. So, what I was going to ask you is what you've answered actually. I was going to ask you how you think that we'll be able to use. You have spoken about the online aspect, and then you've also shed some light on what it is we do specifically, which we know will benefit ourselves. Because coming from different perspectives, like you said, we haven't gotten to the stage where we need to reuse water. But who knows whether there might be a time, especially maybe in Accra, as Accra is right now, they might have to start looking at that possibility. So it would be good if we had someone like you in our classrooms, at least teaching students so that they can look at a broader perspective of water. And then for them to also see that water is a lot. Like the study of water in engineering goes beyond, because you spoke about your novel research and then reuse of water, and the fact that your firm focuses only on water and nothing else. So I think that will help if we were able to get you into, even if not teaching at once, mentorship. Because then our students will start asking you questions, and then you also give them answers and give them examples that they can learn from. So we'll definitely get into our mentorship program. If you are free, that is, you can make the time.
Yes, I'm ready to help, even if I have to make it work by doing the extra mile.
We wouldn't want to burden you, and your health is also key to
I
us.
know, understood, but yeah, whatever it takes for me to help, I'm ready to do that.
That's good news. That's good news. So you have answered all the questions I'd have asked but we want to know, did you have a fun side to you when you were in school? Were you part of any extracurricular activities? Did you hold any positions?
yeah, I'm trying to remember. So started from like secondary school stage. I was like a dormitory prefect. Yeah, started from the secondary school stage.
Okay.
Yes, and I'm trying to say back during the my stay here. Let me see. So I'm looking at, if you're looking at maybe something fun outside academics, right?
Yes.
Yes. So basically, what do you do over here? I don't remember. I think any class, but I said if you are here very interested in football, so I was heavily involved in organizing to play. I think in real secondary schools, I remember that time we used to organize like a football competition, right? And then since Augustine's College and Pantapur, we had that big rivalry. Yes. So that is where I think I was very heavily involved in organizing such matches on campus, and then we played each other.
Okay,
it was very,
so
very fun. So yes,
your alma mater.
Yeah, alma mater, right? It was that time it was very competitive.
Okay.
So we brought all that rivalry from campus back here. Yes, and then we played, right? And then also collaboration between us and our sister school. So this is the Blessings and Holy Child. We had APSU, HOPSA organizations, and we organized trips to Lakeside.
Okay.
Back over here, we go to Lakeside.
Okay.
And then we also had we had to organize like some dinner, right? So we organized APSU, HOPSA dinner and all that. So
you were involved in those things.
Yes, those were the extra characters.
Is your wife a HOPSA?
No, my wife is not a HOPSA.
Okay.
Right. My wife went to a new job in secondary school.
Okay. Nice. And you met her here?
Yes, I actually met in Ghana, not here.
Not at KNUST.
Yeah, not at KNUST.
Unfortunately.
We met in Accra.
I thought maybe
we attended the same church, so that is the connection.
Okay. I was hoping that maybe it was brewed here in KNUST.
Right.
That's fine.
Yes.
That's fine. But do you have any advice you'd like to give students when you were in school? What did you do that you think others could also do?
Yes. So basically, I think this is the same more advice that if you get this opportunity, you have to study. You put in your best, right? I know the program, especially engineering program, it's not an easy program, right? But put in your best. And it's not just here, right? Even in the US, studying engineering is not easy, right? So make sure that you put in all your best. Study well. And in some instances, I think all the time, the course is like that. There are certain things that you cannot understand on your own. So collaborate with other students, form study groups. That is universal. It's not just here.
Yes.
In the US, when it comes to the STEM program, it's hard, very difficult. So collaborate with students and study together, right? That is a very important starting point, because once you finish when you're working, there is teamwork collaboration that is required, right? So by forming study groups, that is where you learn collaboration, right? And it's difficult. There are some students that are difficult to work with, right?
Yes, true.
And that's right. Especially when you get to your project stage, you do group project. That is where you see the friction. So if anything happens, just take it as a learning experience, right? It should be a teaching moment for you, because when you go out in the field, you have to collaborate with others on projects to make it work. So start by collaborating, forming study groups, right? And then get to a point whereby whatever you are studying, you understand the core principles, right? You may not understand what I'm saying right now, but sometimes you need to get to a certain level where you appreciate what you study. So some of these items you just be studying and passing the exam, but when you start practicing, you actually see that you are basically going to use that knowledge, right, and apply it. So it's good to get the basics and understand those basics, so that when you get to the point of application, you actually understand. So this is where, as you said, some of us can come in right now and tell them, right, that we are studying movie diagrams, hydraulic calculations, loans, right? Yeah, that's a wise back and all that, right? Now you just be thinking about how do you pass the exam, right? So some of us can come in and tell you that, okay, this is an actual project I work on. I built this pumping station, and this is how we calculated all those frictional losses, and then to select the pump so that we can actually pump to this point, right? So once you make that connection, that link, as a student, you really appreciate it. You're going to understand that you are not just learning to pass the exam. There's actually correct. There are actually practical implications of whatever you're studying, right? So that is the advice I have for you. Just whatever you're saying, take it serious. And as I said, get very good grades, right? So those of you who want to further education, right? If you get good grades, it's very rewarding. You can go to school without paying school fees, right? So that's my advice. That is a route I took, right? I made sure that I had very good grade. I had first class, so anytime I put in my application, it's a solid application, and then it usually comes with funding. And I'll talk about the US experience. In the United States, right, most of the schools want diversity in their student population, right? So they usually set aside funding to bring students from all over the world, right? So although somebody in the US might have a higher grade point average than you can come in and that person will not be selected because they've had maybe the quota that they need for them, and then they want some international students to supplement. So in order to get to that point, they're going to look at your grades, right? Not just that. One advice I'll give you is those standard tests, TOEFL, GRE, GMAT, and all that, right? Those are very important for funding. There are some schools now that will tell you that it's optional. It's optional if you can pay your fees, you get admission. But if you're like me, who wants funding, take those tests. Because when it gets to awarding funding at that point, I think the argument is that each institution all over the world has different grading system, different professors how they grade, right? So if I have a 10 student that want funding, what do I use as a criteria to select? And it's the standard test, because you all take the same standard test, right? So that is at that point, that's when they're going to look at the fact that now we can evaluate you on the same level because you took the same test. And usually those with the highest score in those standard tests end up being selected for funding.
That makes sense.
Yes, so those of you who are interested in studying abroad, just make sure that you look into these standard tests. You know, some of them are difficult. I know the GRE wasn't easy. Yes, so you have to study it well and prepare well for those exams. And if you do well in the standard test together with whatever you did in school, it's very likely that you can get funding to further your education outside. So that's the advice that I have for you. Focus on those standard tests if you need to go out, and then it's going to be very rewarding for you. But even those of us in the US, we have our children over there. If you go to school, most students take student loan to complete school. So assuming you, for your undergraduate degree, at least, I think they're even higher, I'll take an average of $60,000 a year. So if your child over there doesn't get financial aid, so you're looking at taking loan 60,000 times 4 is what? $240,000. So the student will graduate owing $240,000, and then once you start working, you'll be paying this amount over a long period, right? But by putting a little bit more effort and getting good grades and getting good score, you can come all the way from Ghana and go to school for free and graduate debt-free, whilst those who are even born over there will be paying fees. So it's very rewarding, you know, to study well in school and then also have a vision what you want to do and then plan towards that. So that is my advice. I want to see most of you getting to that point, getting opportunities just as I did. And as I said, some of you will return immediately to my help, which will be great. And even if you don't have the opportunity, still have it at the back of your mind. Look for opportunities to come back and look at ways that you can help.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That's really good advice.
Yes.
Thank you. I don't have to say anything else.
Yes. Also, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
We are rather
Yes,
grateful.
yes, because as you said, this is how the door opens, right? Because without this interview and you telling me about what you have over here, right, I wouldn't know certain things. But with this opportunity, I'm sure I can talk to the right people to see how best I can help.
Yes, please. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
You're